Good morning, world. This is Steve Rao, the host of World Edition on IBMTV, International Broadcast Media Television, soon to be called Pod TV. And on World Edition, we talk about global affairs, innovations, and great things that we can do around the world to get through this pandemic together. Every Friday is Build Back Better Friday, where we talk about developing our playbook for what we can do to be stronger in the United States. This week, we've been talking about the 100 days of Joe Biden's presidency. But today, the day before the Susan B. Komen Race for the Cure virtual events, which begin tomorrow, I'm wearing my pink in honor of breast cancer. But I want to talk about cancer today. In any history of any nation, there are moments when a president and a leader of our nation has the chance to rally our country beyond the colors of our political party or political persuasions for doing something great. President Kennedy did this when he was president, when he rallied America together and said that we need to send man to the moon. And America took our moonshot. We invested in NASA, research and science, and we'll never forget when we saw Neil Armstrong walk on the moon. Our late president said that we do these things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. My late father-in-law was so inspired when he saw a man walk on the moon that he decided to become a surgeon in the United States of America and served alongside my mother-in-law as colonels in the United States Air Force. So today, I want to just take a few minutes and talk about President Biden's moonshot, which he addressed to the United States Congress, and we haven't really talked about in all the media and analysis of his remarks. And he, in one of the most emotional moments in his first major address of Congress, called on lawmakers to end cancer as we know it. This bold pledge came after President Biden made a high-profile endorsement of his administration's proposal to create a new biomedical research agency aimed at developing breakthrough treatments for conditions like cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and diabetes. In his address, the president urged the Congress to create a new agency within the National Institutes of Health, known as the Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health, modeled after a Pentagon office known as DARPA, that has helped to develop the technological breakthroughs, many of them we talk about today, but most remarkably, the internet and all of the innovation we've seen came from DARPA in the last 20 or 30 years of this country's history. It would have a singular purpose, this agency, to develop and prevent, detect, and treat diseases like Alzheimer's and cancer and diabetes. The president's remarks echo a recently released budget document that called the Congress to fund $6.5 billion for this agency's creation. He's previously suggested that Eric Lander, the renowned genomics researcher, will be nominated to lead this scientific effort. I'll end my monologue with the fact that the president reminded us on Thursday that he wanted to, or on Wednesday, that he wanted no political partisanship, that curing cancer and ridding the world of disease is not a political issue. The time has come to be bipartisan, he said. He got emotional when he remembered his late son, Beau Biden, who lost his battle to brain cancer, dying of a glioblastoma. But I want to thank the president for making us think big, to take our moonshot, to creating this agency to rid the world of Alzheimer's, cancer, diabetes, and terrible diseases. And in the midst of a pandemic, amidst racial turmoil and division, I can't think of a better issue to bring our nation together. And for those of you who lost a loved one for cancer, and I know many of you have here or around the world, we pray for you and your families. But together, as Americans and as a world, we can rid the world of this and other dreaded diseases. We wish you all the best, President Biden, and thank you for asking us to take another moonshot. On that note, I bring Mark Lee, Sasha Starr.
Hello. Hello, good morning.
I wanted to end this week on a positive note. I thought it was very inspiring that President Biden did talk about curing cancer through this agency, but it's interesting that not much was said about that in the analysis, and I didn't talk about it yesterday in all of my analysis on different media outlets. So I just want to get your thoughts of this big, bold vision the president had, and this happened when he was vice president. He said that America needs a moonshot to cure cancer, and the bill that they actually named in the Senate was after Bo Biden, the late Bo Biden. So, Mark, what are your thoughts about this issue? And then we're going to talk about other world issues today.
Oh, it's definitely an issue that hits home. I've had some friends that have lost their lives due to various forms of cancer, as well as relatives, and have a dear friend that has been fighting for a number of years, but is actually in remission right now, breast cancer. So Sharon has been fighting that ailment for a number of years, even though she's had a fairly successful career as a singer and as a artist, but it definitely is something that she even talks about on her Facebook page and other things along those lines. So definitely it hits home, and I'm looking forward to seeing the initiatives that might be out there and how these things can hopefully get us on a more healthier path. Like I said, a lot of these diseases have been out there for a number of years, and there's been talk of trying to find a cure for a number of years, whether that's the various forms of cancer, or whether that's multiple sclerosis, or whether that's something that's more a lot of times diet oriented, like diabetes. And I actually have a very good friend that has been suffering from that as well for a number of years. So definitely, these are some much needed initiative. So looking forward to seeing how they play out, and hopefully they don't run into any bureaucratic snags, because we do know that the bureaucrats can sometimes interfere with things as well. But I'm looking forward to seeing them develop. And I saw some good news along not so much the health line, but another line when I was reading the newspaper earlier today, because I saw that we're actually about to get a commuter line here into the Triangle. It looks like it's going to go between Durham and Raleigh to Clayton and places like that. So that's another bold initiative that I think is being led by federal efforts as well as state efforts. But I did see that in our one of our local magazines, The Independent, that I was reading earlier today.
Oh, wonderful. Sasha, what are your thoughts about the president's challenge to the nation? I like to call it our moonshot, to think big, get us to look beyond partisanship. Is it idealistic, or is it the passion of a president who's really wanting to do something here?
Well, obviously, he's a very passionate man. Goes without saying. He has great vision, and as a visionary, I think he's second to none. I can't compare him with any previous presidents of the United States. Um, but there are certain challenges, and the biggest one, how to deal with the remains of certain party leader of which called him a sleepy Joe. That loser is still there, and they are preparing to inflict heavy damages to Democrats in about a year and a half from now. So while he's on a roll, and Democratic Party is on a roll right now, they have to go all in and completely bury all the remains of Republican Party. And this way, there will be a green light to do all his visionary projects.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's you bring up a really relevant point, Sasha. I mean, I think that um, give me 1 second here. I think that it's amazing that you know the war. I guess it was in the movie The Last Jedi where Luke Skywalker said, "The war has just begun," or "The rebellion has just begun. The war is not over," and the political war is certainly far from over. So there's definitely some, and I think that before we're going to continue our talk about this agency for cancer, but before we do that, I think so there's two issues I see the Republicans using as they prepare to attack Biden in a year and a half. One is immigration and the border issue, right? Two is the increases to pay for his $6 trillion, his child care plan, which is $1 trillion, which would give free tuition, 800 billion of child tax care credits, all kinds of pre-K, pre-K through kindergarten, kind of benefits for families, but it's $6 trillion, and it's going to tax the top income earners and those making over 400,000 big corporations. So how do we? Do you all? Let me ask you this question: do you think that the president needs to just keep leading, or do you think the more bold he gets, he's just emboldening the other side that's going to say come back, or do you think it's really going to be about the economy and a year from now, people saying, "Are you better off 2 years from now, 2 years ago than you are now?"
What has to happen? Oh, sorry,
No,
Mark.
go. No, what do
Oh,
you
okay.
think?
Okay. What's needed is remember why Ronald Reagan was a great president. He was a great communicator. Right now, Biden, but not only him, but all Democratic Party, they have to communicate to majority of people who supported them, but all others hopefully too, to communicate what a great plan it is and how every person and every family, forget about the people earning $400,000 plus. Okay, just put them aside because they will never be happy and they will always cry that, oh, now I have to pay extra $300 in taxes. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Just forget about them, just ignore them. There is no win situation with these people. Just go out and tell people how their family, their kids will benefit from all the democratic programs. That's the only way really to make impact and to win election in a year and a half.
Mark Lee, what are your thoughts?
No, I definitely agree with what Sasha was saying, but definitely the way we've got to handle this is I think that he will continue making bold initiatives. I don't think that that's changed any time during his tenure as a politician and as a public service person. So I definitely think that he will continue making bold initiatives. Some of them may not be as popular as others, but I think that that's the way that you have to handle it. And I think you have to go ahead and make those bold initiatives. And I think that at the end, whether it's the midterm elections that are coming up in next year or in the next elections about 3 years from now, that we'll have folks that will ask that question as you asked, whether they're better off now or better off than they were before he came into office. But I'm actually thinking he's headed in the right direction, and that if anything, there might be a wider gap of people that will be supporting him and all of that. So I expect that he will gain supporters. I've even heard some people that voted for the former person that have found some gains that they have had in their own pocketbooks. And I think that they may be considering voting for Biden should he decide to go for a second term, or if not, then vote for the Democrat that would come after him. But definitely, I think that this is the kind of initiatives that have to be made if you're going to make those kind of power plays as the Democrats are doing.
Yes, I agree, and I think also before we get back into talking about the cure to cancer and other diseases, I think that President Biden, I think that if he can show an increase in economic performance, so that we get herd immunity. He did beat the goal of 200 million before the 100 days, very close to the deadline, but he did beat it. And all of a sudden now, movie theaters opening up, restaurants opening up, Broadway is opening back up, New York City is opening back up. A year from now, if the economy is roared back better than it was before COVID, unemployment goes down, if there's no inflation, I think it may be very hard for the Republicans to say, "I told you so." Put Republicans in, right? So
Yeah.
I think that he's actually taking a gamble that being a little bolder may sacrifice him with the moderates and the centrists. But I think if his actions produce the results that he's looking for, then I think he will be hard to beat. So real quickly about and I'm going to have to leave at 10:30, but I'll be back in about 10:50 mark. But keep it going. Um, what do you all think about this agency, the Advanced Research Project Agency, that supposedly is going to be $6.5 billion, likening it to DARPA? DARPA, correct me if I'm wrong, but what are some of the innovations that came out of DARPA? I think the internet, but there are other things that came out of DARPA, and should we be encouraged? And do you think it's important to have a separate agency that focuses on this if we're going to cure cancer?
I mean, I definitely think that anytime you have an agency devoted to a single issue, it is usually a good thing because there you can focus on that issue much deeper than, say, if you try to put it under the Health and Human Services or something like that. I mean, so definitely, spinning off an agency that is devoted to a particular cause or a particular problem that exists makes sense to me because definitely then you can put those resources there and singularly focus them on that one issue. I mean, we've seen it happen a number of other times. I believe there was a couple of agencies that were devoted toward AIDS research, and there have definitely been agencies devoted toward other kinds of problems that exist in society. And if you even want to go back to the days of, say, the New Deal and stuff like that, there were agencies that were created to help people out of poverty and things along those lines. So definitely, I think that it's something that historically has been done, and I'm not surprised that Biden is doing it as well.
Sasha, what are your thoughts about a federal agency? Do you think this warrants the measures of a federal agency to cure cancer, Alzheimer, other diseases?
Yeah, I think it's a positive development and should have been done a long time ago. At least it's done now. And that's definitely will benefit a lot of people. And that's another thing that has to be emphasized and communicated to as many people as possible.
Fantastic. So Mark Lee brought up a good point about the commuter rail in Raleigh, and so, but this made me think about something Sasha has brought up on the show. It is, I think this is the result of two things. One, the American Jobs and Rescue Plan. So Secretary Buttigieg is going to be here in Raleigh at the train station in Raleigh today, talking with Doug Emhoff about the American Jobs Act, former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and presidential candidate. So I think it's a result of that. But also in North Carolina, the recent announcement of Apple with 3,000, potentially even more than 3,000 employees, has actually accelerated discussions from our own DOT officials and transit agencies about commuter rail. And so this is a good positive note. But devil's advocate here, I don't think it's fast enough. I mean, like Sasha reminds us, in China, they're creating airports, hundreds of airports, laying down new rail. You can go from Shanghai to Beijing in a few hours. And here we are talking about trains, but we're not putting the tracks down and building. I'm going to start with Sasha. Sasha, do you think it's too much talk in America and that we're not acting fast enough? How do we execute these plans faster in America?
Yeah, I think you hit it right. There is a lot of talk and not too many deeds. The thing is that also whenever you're discussing infrastructure, it just has to be part of everyday's life in America. It just must be part of everything what is going in America. And when you discuss such as building this line in North Carolina as such a big deal, almost like a national project, that's quite worrisome. It just has to be done automatically, just get it out of the way. Because the country with a $20 trillion economy cannot do that, just a matter of fact. That's quite worrisome, to tell you the truth.
Yes, I mean, I think it's a matter of infrastructure. Mark, what are some other issues that we need to talk about today as we develop our playbook for America? We've talked this week about climate change. We've talked about infrastructure. We've talked about guns. We've talked about, race relations. I mean, it's, it's almost like watching a movie, with all of the different subplots going on. It's hard to, it's almost like the show 24. When Jack Bauer would look at, at the end of the show, they'd have the 4 split screens. I'm seeing like multiple split screens. I'm seeing COVID-19. I'm seeing race relations. In North Carolina, we had another death, Andrew Brown, killed by police officer in Elizabeth City. We've got the George Floyd verdict. We've got, the infrastructure. We've got, and What are your thoughts about this? I mean,
Well, within the infrastructure, there's another major issue that I don't think has been addressed yet. I know that me and Sasha have talked about it on the show in the past, and the the gifting that was done as part of the pandemic, it's winding down. It seems like more and more people are getting vaccinated, and more people are getting out and about, which means, as you said, the society is opening. But sometimes if you, as Sasha can say, since he's in the investment world, sometimes if you borrow money, or if money is given to you as a loan, then there comes a time that you've got to give payback to that loan as well. And a lot of people were given various forms of forgiveness for definitely utilities and for housing and things of that nature. So as we get back into a better society, that's one of the issues that I'm going to be paying close attention to, is how does that impact housing, apartment rents, and things along those lines? Because there were some apartments that forgave rent or worked out deals and things of that nature. But now that we're getting back, some of those folks may be owing, 4 to 5 months worth of rent and things along those lines. So, unless they've got a windfall, and I know there's still some government money that's coming out there, or is supposed to be coming to people, they may be some folks that are in a dilemma. And a lot depends on what the courts do as well, because the courts had also not pursued those activities for a while. But I imagine as we get more quote unquote normal, those things will be back in play again. So I think that housing is going to be an issue that we haven't really touched on, and things along those lines. And even coming back to the commuter rail, one of the things that I'm seeing is that there is division, not just among the races and among ethnicities, but also among regions. I was talking to a gentleman yesterday, and he was telling me that he had not been that long ago, it's probably before COVID, to California, and he actually saw the self-moving cars. So apparently in California, they've got some of the cars that you can literally get in the car, and the car will, move itself and all of that. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, he was actually overseas. He was in Dubai when he saw that. But we're not seeing that enough. So there's also going to be some developments in that kind of field as well. So I don't know. Do they have the self-moving cars in Canada yet, Sasha, or in Russia? And what are your thoughts about that? Where you can just jump in the car and apparently the car will take you where you want to go, assuming you tell it the right thing. It's kind of like Alexa. You got to tell it the right thing.
Um, I, I don't think it's going to happen in America in next 25, 30 years. Let's not think about something what is not going to happen. I'm going to tell you something else. I was in Singapore in I was in 1990. It's more than 30 years ago, believe it or not. And I've noticed their subway was completely automated. It had platforms that the doors were opening only when the train was approaching the station, and the tracks were as such that, and they had certain angle when the trains are making turns. So you and it was getting up to speed and then braking, so you could stay and you wouldn't hold anything to try to balance, because you didn't need to, because the trains were so greatly automatically and technologically advanced. And when you will have such a subway system in America, say 50 years from now, 100 maybe, I don't know. That's what I saw in Singapore 31 years ago.
Wow.
wow,
That was
wow. I
31
mean,
years
yeah,
ago?
Yeah, 31, 19, the year 1990. And I thought they didn't build it right because Sasha Starr visited Singapore. I think it functioned probably that way, maybe a couple of years, at least a couple of years prior to that.
yes. I mean, I think that, yeah, yeah. It's just, I, uh, I feel really, really, it's amazing all of this futuristic talk and the kinds of things that are going on. I just think it's amazing the world, how fast it's changing. And I think that we also have to deal with, the challenges of this kind of innovation, its impact on society, digital technologies, and the mental health of our children as people are not communicating. But I'll give you a practical example of where um, technology is making a difference. So I'm working with Mark Lee on a couple of other things, and I really wanted to go see him in person today, but feeling a bit tired. And the fact that I can use Zoom and send him a thing and have a coffee and look him in the eye and talk without doing just a phone call. So I'm saving 30, 40 miles of gas. Going
Yeah.
to give me a little bit more time to get some stuff done in the evening that I want to. Now, a year ago, I was actually thinking today, Mark, a year and a half ago, it wouldn't even have occurred to me to use Zoom. My
Well, that's
option would have
true.
been let's do a phone call, even though the technology existed.
Right.
So this is something interesting is that there are areas where COVID has affected the future. The second thing I'll say, I have found that I'm getting more effective working in a virtual environment. Now, I
Well,
never thought that would ever be the case, but I feel like I'm doing more. Now I'm really got a job because I've got to work while I'm here. And then when I'm out in the field, I'm meeting people. So I'm feeling a little weirded out here.
yeah, well, it's interesting that you say that because I mean, more and more people are feeling that way. A lot of people are also feeling, and I may get to Sasha at this in a minute and everything. That sometimes that because the computer is usually in your house and everything like that. There's an expression in showbiz of always being on, and I think that we're starting to see more and more of that in the work environment and everything, where people are always feeling like they've got to have that on kind of environment of always having work, and a lot of people are working beyond say the 9 to 5 just because the computer is there, and like I said, they might work 9 to 5, do a couple of other things like household errands, if they've got family, take care of their family, and then in the evening time, almost like you were back in school, jumping back on the work environment, or maybe if you've got multiple jobs, you work on some of the second and third jobs in the evening time. But I am seeing more and more people that are working, longer hours in some ways. So, like I said, I know that even some of the companies are wondering if that's not helping their productivity. And in some cases, they may not. I know, like Google and other people are trying to get people to come back into the workforce, meaning the job building and everything. But some people may not even be rushing them back into the job because they may feel that there's enough productivity with them working from home. So that's kind of going to be an interesting sociological um, finding one way or the other, depending on what the scientists that study that stuff find out about this and everything. And it's even impacted people that are in the social life with their dating lives. And I know that people are definitely going to, now that people are back out again, those that are single will probably be back doing some of those single kind of activities, whether that's going to the clubs, whether that's going to concerts, and a number of other things that they were not doing before, or if they were doing it, they were maybe doing it virtually, and things along those lines. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out in the ways of people thinking. And one of the other things I was going to bring to Sasha's standpoint and yours as well before you leave is I actually had an interesting conversation yesterday. There's a game that's actually, I think the Bulls tomorrow are going to have like their fan event, and that's our minor league baseball team and everything. But baseball is supposed to be America's pastime. But a lot of folks are feeling that in certain societies, I actually had a friend of mine that did a special show yesterday and everything, and he was talking about it in the African American community, that in a lot of communities in the inner city and even just in America throughout, I would even argue rural America, that baseball doesn't have the same luster that it used to. It's supposed to be America's pastime, but it may be third on the list, or it may have even slipped to possibly even fourth or fifth, because new games like lacrosse and even older games like hockey are gaining in popularity. So I know that
Yeah.
definitely there have been some
Well,
great baseball teams out of
I'll,
Canada, but I was just wondering your thoughts, Sasha. Do you feel that
I'll, yeah,
baseball has lost its luster?
I'll be back in 15 minutes, guys, or 20 minutes, but I'll let
Okay.
Sasha and you handle it, and I'll be right back. And then we're going to talk about the changes in mask mandates and other things going on in the world. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what do you
Okay.
think, Sasha?
Uh, if it comes to baseball, I'm not the greatest expert in baseball. Of course, my sport is European soccer,
Hmm.
football, and that's what I'm following very closely. And I'm watching a lot of matches, and I'm doing a lot of bets on European football, baseball to a lesser extent. Now, interestingly enough. Baseball is very popular game in North America. There's no doubts about that. It's popular in Canada as well, but maybe because of climate, it has a difficult time to compete with hockey. Um, so you see, the baseball it's more than just a game. It's a kind of a social infrastructure which
Right.
requires people to get together and enjoy each other and so on. But it seems to me it's a little bit antiquated activity. Um, to become a great baseball player, yeah, it requires certain skills, not comparable to soccer, of course, by any means, or many other games. But yes, it does. Yeah, you have to practice a lot or so on. But if in soccer you to become somebody on the level of Ronaldo or Messi, it
Right.
requires 10,000 hours of practice and probably even more. In baseball, I think you should be okay with 1,000, maybe 1,000 1,500 hours of practice because there is very limited, so to speak, set of skills required. So, okay, you'll develop the skills to a great level, but that's about it. Other thing, it's your overall physical fitness and so on. So, obviously, if you're playing baseball, your total fitness is on a certain level, I would assume. Um, Now, as a social thing, now you mentioned before that a lot of things are done on Zoom
Hmm. Yeah,
these days. Well, you cannot play baseball on Zoom, I would
that's
assume.
true. You cannot play back. Well,
Uh,
maybe you can do a simulation on Zoom or do some of those kind of like video game versions, but no, you cannot play the actual game on Zoom. That's very true. You cannot
Well,
play.
that's where the biggest difference between all other sports and chess, because
Right.
chess, in fact, you can play on internet, and the game essentially will remain the same. You still have
Right.
to play by the rules. You still have to checkmate in order to win the game, and so on. So chess is kind of a unique game. There are some problems in chess, especially with online chess, like
Mhm.
cheating. People are using engine and so on. Yes, that's another set of problem, but you can still play a decent game. I think a combination of Zoom and playing chess on internet. So if both partners who are playing, they are in a Zoom, and the Zoom is in such situations that you can observe all your face, your hands,
Right.
everything. I think the cheating could be probably defeated by doing all that, because although I'm not saying it's impossible to cheat, probably it is possible. I mean, some people may be uh, extra talented, and they will find, maybe they will um, inject their brain with the artificial chip, so it will be inside the brain and therefore undetected. That's possible, and
Right.
but then their opponent will do probably the same thing. So now they both have chips, so they're still in equal situation, and of course they will have to spend a great deal of time and money to do all that. So if people choose to do that, you
Yeah,
can
people are going
prevent.
to cheat. People are going to cheat if they're going to cheat. I mean, you can't stop a cheater from cheating if that's their nature and everything. And some people, that's just their nature to be cheaters. I know that definitely, the great ones probably are not going to cheat that much because they got this great skills and don't need to cheat. And definitely, they also have good moral standards and all of that. Many of them, I can't say all of them, but and that's in any sport and everything. Yesterday when we had Rakesh on, I had asked him about the leadership of New Zealand and how that was going and everything. And I know, even though y'all are to the north of us and everything, and I know that Canada is divided into provinces and all of that, but in your province and just in general, what do you think are, to come back to one of the things that Steve asks all the time, what are some of the things that we're not talking about that are going on in Canada that you wish more people knew about, whether that's the entire of the country or whether that's the province that you're in? Because, like I said, I know a lot of times, even though y'all are our neighbors to the north, we don't always know what's going on in either Canada or Mexico, and that's our neighbors to the south. So I was just wondering, what are some of the issues that you wish in your mind more people in North America and particularly the United States were hearing from the country that you have adopted as your country and have been there for a number of years with your lovely wife and everything?
Thank you. I think Canada, in many ways, very similar to United States. Really, there are some differences, and I think these differences overall benefit Canadians, such as universal health care. For
Mhm.
example, if I have to see the doctor, I don't have to worry about deductibles or thinking that I have to pay so much money here and there or so on. It's actually free of charge completely. So it's all covered by provincial healthcare plans. So like in Ontario, we have Ontario Health Insurance Plan. For short, it's OHIP, Ontario Health Insurance Plan. And every Canadian or Ontario citizen, even if he is not a citizen of Canada, but he lives in Ontario, he has a little card, which I can demonstrate to you. And with this card, you can visit any doctor, any appointments that you might have. All you do, you just show the card, and that's it. That's it. That's the end of story. Um, the pills, for example, since I'm over 65, so all my pills are free of charge. I don't pay for any pills, whatever I need. And other people, before I was 65, I had to pay, of course. And the payments are reasonable. I wouldn't say that they would throw me out of budget, or or I would think, you know what, the pills are too expensive. It's much cheaper for me to just go and die. For example, I don't
Wow.
think anybody would be in that situation. Hopefully,
Yeah, it
and
sounds like y'all doing much better in terms of health and everything. But Tasha, you need to stop telling folks that lie. You know you're really only 45 or 50. I don't know why you keep trying to tell people that you're above 65. You know that you're really a youthful man in your 50s and all of that. So I don't know why you're trying to tell folks that you're pushing near 70 and all of that. We're not buying it. We know that you're actually closer to 45 or something like that, and that
oh
your
yeah,
your,
yeah,
like,
thank
your
you.
girl wife is probably in her mid 30s and things of that nature. So don't try to fool us with that whole talk of how old you are. But on a serious note, is do you find ageism to be an issue? We oftentimes hear that here in the United States, but is it as much of an issue in, say, either the Soviet Union or in Canada? Because I don't hear it as much in other countries. In some countries, it seems like they even give deference and respect to those that are above 60 and 65, whereas here it's not always the case. So, what is your personal experience when you go out in Canada and you're dealing with younger people, whether that's folks that are technically in their middle age or the youth? Do they give you, in your mind, the respect that you deserve, or do you think that there's still that age disrespect even there in Canada?
No, I think that the Canada is essentially a multicultural country where there are people of many nationalities are. But don't forget that the respect for elders is a part of almost any European and Asian cultures. So, and since in Canada, of course, you have basically a replication of mostly European and Asian cultures. So obviously there is a great respect to elders. And I remember yesterday, actually, I went to a store to upgrade my phone to
Mhm.
iPhone 12. And people, it took me probably well over an hour to transfer all the data from old phone to a new phone. And the problem was that I forgot my password for the old phone, and the reason I forgot it, I never used it. And
Right.
even probably I've written it somewhere, but I was in the store, so I couldn't retrieve that, even if I wanted to find it. So anyway, we had to deal with that problem there. And a couple of young people in their early 20s, I'm pretty sure, and they were so helpful, and they were actually they were calming me down and saying, "Don't worry, we are going through that. Oh, we are going to all necessary steps, but you will leave with a charge phone and with all the changes that you wanted to have and everything." And yes, it took a little bit of time, probably around an hour, but they were so patient and helpful, and uh, then I just saw that maybe they were so polite and patient, because if I were in their place, I would I would just run that person out of the store and I would tell him, "Never come back, idiot," and so on. But for them, so I just started to think maybe because they were respectful to my age, maybe that's a factor.
Yeah. What was one of the biggest what was one of the biggest things you had to adjust to when you moved from Canada to from Russia? Because, like I said, I'm sure there was some adjustments. I know that anytime that I've even gone and had moves, like I moved many years ago down to Florida, where I worked at a newspaper for a hot second, and that was a culture shock. And then I've gone and visited friends in New York and places like that. Even though I've lived the majority of my life in North Carolina, I did spend that time in Florida, and I did spend the 4.5 years for college in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin. But and then of course I've traveled a little bit. But what was one of the biggest culture shocks that you had when you moved from Russia to Canada?
Yeah, okay. I want to tell you something that. Biggest shock. I'm not sure that I had. My only shock was when we were traveled by train from my city where I was born, Odessa. We traveled by train to Vienna, Austria.
Hmm.
And when a train approached Vienna, and I saw all these fantastic yellow nights and stores, the the city itself, people. Well, Vienna actually even today is quite impressive place to visit, and like today, I wouldn't have shock, of course, but at that time, yes, I had a shock because that was incomparable to anything what I've ever seen in Soviet Union. And I traveled in Soviet Union a great deal. I've seen many cities, but Vienna was really a shock. But after Vienna, whenever you moved, we moved then to Rome, Italy, and from Rome we flew to Toronto. The only thing, Toronto, the first few days we spent in the hotel, and from from the windows, I was watching the traffic, and there were, of course, at that time, huge American cars,
Hmm.
and I've never seen these cars before, neither in the Soviet Union or even Vienna or Rome. So these huge cars were to me quite attractive, and I wasn't shocked. At least I saw this type of cars in movies, but now I saw them in reality. So that was kind of interesting. But then when it became like every day, I was always surprised how people are very polite to each other. You never see people screaming. Like in Russia at the time, people were screaming always at each other, even on the street, because there was every day's fight to to get the food, to buy necessary things, which were in very short supply. So people would fight with each other who would get that part of this short supply. So of course, all that was. Um, you couldn't see any of that in Canada, even at that time, in the 70s. And the life was very pleasant. People were very helpful to each other. Actually, they were more helpful than I would say today. Uh,
Sure.
yeah, unfortunately, the crime was non-existent at that time in Toronto. You could actually you could leave the door open in your house, and you can go for a few hours without even worrying that somebody would trespass your property. Uh, it's not the same today, but okay, we still enjoy a great thing of law and order in today's Canada.
Yeah, law and order is definitely important. It seems like for everybody, and definitely, I think y'all still have. But I may have asked you this before. I think y'all still have the Mounties. Is that the case with the law enforcement, the horseback police officers?
Well, yes, they called RCMP, it's Royal Canadian Mounted Police. You do probably in downtown Toronto, you'll probably have a few, but out of the center city, I don't think, at least I've never seen mounted police. But the police is very well respected in Toronto. They are there primarily to help people. So if I would need a help with almost any issue, I would approach police and ask them to help, and they would help me.
We actually mentioned you yesterday, by the way. I knew that I was trying to remember how your name came up, and it was in a good way, but it's something that you've actually talked about. But I know that Jacoby, and you can go back and watch the edition, but he had two law enforcement officers from Durham that were on the Gamers Den. You know, that's his video
Oh,
game show. But
yeah,
they were
yeah,
actually
very
talking
good show.
about the legal issues and some of the stereotypes that they have to face. Because there was a young lady who is a community outreach person, and then there was an actual captain who is actually a captain in the police force, Captain Gaddy. But we had mentioned the fact of your conversation that people just need to respect law enforcement and things along those lines, and they definitely agreed with you in that
Mhm.
regards. Because, like I said, there was a conversation that was held yesterday afternoon around lunchtime and everything, but they
Uh-huh.
definitely agreed with the things that you were saying about respect, but also they were letting us know that folks can even go on citizen rides and citizen patrols and get to learn what officers have to go through and even gain more respect for law enforcement by doing that. And they also agreed that if they're bad apples, those bad apples need to be rooted out. Like I said, if you go and look at yesterday's edition, which would have been the 29th edition of the Gamers Den, you'll see that they were on there. I think the lady officer was on almost from jump, so almost from the
Hmm.
beginning until the end.
Yeah, thank you for letting me know. I will I will look it up for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So it was quite an interesting conversation. Like I said, I definitely had referred some of the things that you talked about that respect element, because I do agree that sometimes we don't respect law enforcement enough, and we need to respect those folks that have put on the badge, particularly if they're not the bad apples. And of course, there are bad apples in everything. I don't care what field there are always some bad apples that may exist or not exist, but definitely it was just good having that conversation.
Hmm. Yeah,
Guys,
thanks.
I'm back. I'm
You're
sorry
back.
I had to yeah, sorry. It's been a crazy Friday. Um,
Yeah.
so I know you guys had a wonderful discussion. We have a few more minutes left, and I thought I'd come back in and sort of bring us to close.
Yeah.
I guess as we prepare for next week, we got a lot of moving parts with Biden now beginning day 101,
Yeah.
and looking at the turbulence of our nation. However, on a positive note, I think it's exciting in that tonight at 5 p.m. in North Carolina, you'll no longer be be required to wear a mask outside. 100 people can gather outdoors, 200 outdoors and 100 indoors, and high schools are graduating. Um, festivals are coming back. I think the DPAC's going to open up in the fall again, but Broadway's opening up. So I'm beginning to
Yep.
feel that America, yeah, is coming back, right?
Yep.
So
Yep. DPAC is opening up, as you said, and thinking late summer, early fall. The Durham Bulls, they had a fan thing scheduled. I think that's still on for tomorrow and everything. I haven't. I looked online and I think that they were, trying to see what was going to go on with the weather. But it sounds like that's going to be a shortened version. Usually it's more extended, but I think it's 5 to 7 tomorrow. The Carolina Theater will be doing a virtual event because there's still virtual events as well in May and everything, and they will probably open sometime in the fall. So yes, things are starting to open up slowly but surely, but definitely things that are going on. I think that even my nephews are playing. Speaking of, and that's one of the things me and Sasha were talking about. Speaking of soccer, and they played for a number of years. I think that they are in their season and are actually probably in the middle of the season as well. So definitely, even some of the school activities and like park activities, 'cause I think they do that through Parks and Rec, are taking place as well. So definitely, we're seeing more and more things opening up, and hopefully that will continue to be the case.
Sasha, what are things going on in Canada? Are things loosening up in Canada? And Mark, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Are things loosening up in Canada?
Unfortunately not. Here in Toronto, things are actually, it's complete close out. Everything is closed. You can be stopped while you're driving. You can be stopped on the street to figure out where exactly you're driving and from where. And if it's not essential driving, you can be charged with a heavy fine. Um, so, the reason for the outbreaks in Toronto apparently were daily flights, direct flights from India. There were hundreds of people arriving to Toronto every day from India. And that's where the reasons for outbreaks. Now these flights were all stopped. Situation is somewhat improving, but not great deal yet. So everything in lockdown. There were attempts to redirect the flights so people would fly from India to Frankfurt, Germany, and from Frankfurt to Toronto. But I think that's now being dealt with. So it will
Yeah,
take still a few weeks.
that's a good point. I mean, one thing that I've thought about, and the president didn't bring it up much in his address, but this I think might be a good way to end our session today as we develop a playbook, is the role of the United States after we get through to herd immunity of helping other parts of the world. It's already happening as we're sending raw materials to India. But Sasha brings up a very good point. If the pandemic continues to get worse in other nations of the world, the fear is that it may never go away because, people traveling from India, traveling from here to India and other nations. So there's been a sense of what I would call vaccination nationalism, where every country has tried to vaccinate their own nation, right? But when we look at world edition and global affairs, I think it's very important to understand that we're all connected here. And so we can't say, well, India is struggling, let them deal with it, and let's get better here. We should be very concerned with the fact that 2,000 people a day are dying in India, that they had last Friday 4 million cases, that 375,000 have died, 16 or 17 million cases, and there's no evidence of it going down anytime soon. This is a huge threat to the world. Don't you guys agree? How do we
No,
go
I
about
definitely agree that it's definitely a huge threat to the world. And speaking of what's going on in India, and I don't know whether we've mentioned it or anything, and I don't even know whether we should, but I'm going to go ahead and mention it. But our sympathies do go out to one of our primary founders and leaders within the organization, because Ankit did lose recently his father and everything, and so that was something that I saw on Facebook, and I think that it was COVID related, from what I understand. So definitely our sympathies go out to Ankit as he deals with that. I think that happened maybe I want to say that it was yesterday that took place.
Sasha, what do you think? Is this going to require more effort with the World Health Organization? How did the monies come up for us to put more vaccine and more tests in the hands of all these countries so that COVID goes down all over the world? Because until we get rid of it, and then what if another pandemic hits?
Yeah, we are living through unique times because what's happening the last year, this year, never happened before. Because even if you will compare this pandemic to 100 years ago, the Spanish flu, at that time, people didn't travel from continent to continent a great deal.
Right.
It was still time of First World War. And what's happening right now, it's really uncharted waters, and it's very difficult to find, like, almost every decision has to be made, taking so many factors in consideration. And we still, even today, we don't know enough about the COVID-19, its originating, its
Yeah.
cure, the variants. For example, even now, for example, some people, like even older people, they're getting through without any difficulties, and younger people in their 30s, 40s, they are dying in a matter of a few days. It's still that's why I it's very inconvenient, but I do support in Toronto complete lockdown, because in a lockdown situation, that's the only way what can guarantee stop spreading of the virus. That's the only thing what can guarantee it. Because even if you take situation where some people already being vaccinated in Toronto for sure, there are still some people who are not, and even vaccinated people, it's still unclear whether they are completely insulated from the virus, because even the best vaccines, they have what, 94, 95% of efficiency. So it's still a great deal. Very. I wish all the best to American states like North Carolina who are opening up, and hopefully maybe the percentage of vaccinated people is so great that the chance to being affected by coronavirus are maybe next to zero. We'll see how it works, and I really wish all the best.
Yes, and we have a few more. Go ahead, Mark. We have a few more minutes left, and we're going to wrap up today. Mark, any final thoughts before we close out today?
No, I mean, just to hope folks will stay safe. I know that we're going to be gone for, I think it's a week, if I remember correctly, Steve. Then we're going to be taking that a week off and coming back on the second week in May and everything. So definitely we're going into this new version of IBM TV called Pod TV, and I think that that launches on tomorrow. So, but it looks like that will help folks in the sense of gaining more audience and all of that. So it seems like it's a positive move. So we're looking forward to being involved in that direction. So I did get that email, and definitely want to urge people to go to the YouTube page and subscribe, because last time I looked, as we were moving into this model, we've got one subscriber at each station, and that's me. So we need more than one. So we need more folks to get involved in all of that. So definitely hope that folks will go over there and subscribe to the various Pod TV channels, because we've got several of them. I think there's a channel that features one channel that has Sasha's investment, and another channel that has his chess show as well, since I don't think that they're on the same channel, since they are different styles of programming. And I know that I'm on two or three of those channels as well. So definitely want folks to go check that out and do their part to help us gather this world audience that we are slowly but surely building.
Actually, tomorrow's chess show will be quite interesting. We'll discuss just finished candidate tournaments. And one interesting thing about that, and we'll discuss it probably for the first time ever, is sex and chess. Because what's happened is in the on FIDE channel, where they were doing commentaries to candidates, there were two presenters, well-known grandmasters, very attractive men and women. And he asked her if she has porno in her computer, laptop. And that was handled quite interestingly. And there were a lot of discussions whether it's a sexist question or not, and what was about her reaction and so on. So we'll try to figure out what it's all about.
Well, it's been a great show today as we close out. We do pray for Ankit and his family, and any family who has suffered illness or lost a loved one. We will do whatever we can to help India. If you're interested, you can go to baptscharities.org, which is an international organization. They have a local chapter here. Also, the Hindu Society of North Carolina, through an organization called SEVA. So these are organizations that are putting money on the ground in India to help with providing supplies, masks, medical personnel, and of course, President Biden is sending raw materials to India to develop the vaccine. On that note, tomorrow in North Carolina is the Susan B. Komen Race for the Cure to cure breast cancer and raise money for breast cancer. You can go to WRIL's website in North Carolina to get information about that. That's why I'm wearing my pink. But on the notion of cancer, we are encouraged that President Joe Biden has announced a moonshot to rid the world of cancer through a federal agency, the American Research Project, modeled after DARPA. And we hope that just like we set Neil Armstrong to walk on the moon, that this bold initiative will be able to enable our nation and might be the very thing we need to unite us to do great things so that, as the president said, America can show the world that we're on the move again, but not just for a short time, for a long time. On that note, I want to wish everyone a good weekend and be safe wherever you are. And may the light and love of our hearts always lift us out of the darkness. We welcome you back in a week from Monday to Pod TV. And we might be posting some things here and there. But thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, see you the week after next.